So while Catherine's getting the screen up, hello again to everybody. It's been a long day, I know that, but the last session is on that key topic. We just heard from Greg and colleagues on the joint initiatives, and now we're looking at, again, looking at environmental sustainability and humanitarian logistics, a really critical topic that's come out throughout the course of the GLM and is actually mainstreamed into the strategy for 2022 and beyond for the logistics cluster partners to ensure that we can really give the attention that's needed to driving this one forward. So we'll give it a couple of minutes while people get themselves settled, cups of coffee topped back up.
Can you see my screen, or is it still?
I can see your screen.
Excellent. Great.
I can do, yes, that's perfect. So we'll just give it a couple of minutes, Catherine, while people get themselves connected. So as people join us back online, we're almost there. I think we're on bang on time now, Catherine. So we might want to start kicking off. So hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Just mentioned it in the previous session, but in case you're just joining us now, environmental sustainability and humanitarian logistics, it's really apparent that all of the logistics cluster partners are very painfully aware that it's our responsibility to do no harm and to avoid any unintended impacts of our supply chains on the environment or the communities that we serve. And one of the challenges that we have is that while there are many great activities and initiatives out there, we're all aware that trying to balance supply chains and logistics for emergency response in some of the really challenging contexts that everybody works in is a hugely difficult challenge. So everything that we can do to collaborate together to maximize our efforts and streamline our approach is going to be of huge value in making sure that we can make progress in this area despite all of the other challenges. So one of the ways in which we're hoping as the logistics cluster community partners to move forward with this is with this specific project, which is really a catalyst. That's the whole idea. We know that there are many fantastic projects and initiatives out there, but this one here is a catalyst to bring together a number of different streams and to really drive us forward with that. So what we have is a very unique setup, which is the first time for the logistics cluster that we've come together with a project which, while it's coordinated by the GLC, has got on the steering committee a number of the partners. So you can see that across the top there: IFRC, Danish Refugee Council, Save the Children, and WFP. And very much as we heard from Greg in the joint initiative before, key to all of this is having partner engagement. So we've got these 4 members of the steering committee together with GLC supporting with the facilitation, really trying to push this forward and make sure that it's of benefit for the whole logistics cluster partner community. And as it says on the slide here, which I won't read out one by one, this also means that we've got a kind of cross-sectoral scope because so many different sectors are represented by the LOGS cluster partners. We are hugely lucky and very thankful because we have received some funding to kick this off. So it's been a long time, and I know Bruno's on the call with us now, that we've been trying to get this project up and off the ground, and Bruno was very much behind that together with the colleagues from the other partners at the beginning. And so we were really pleased this year to receive some funding from VHA and also UPS, which we'll come to in a moment later on in the presentation, that has enabled us to get this off the ground, and really great timing as we can seek to coordinate with other initiatives that are out there. I think that it is absolutely no surprise to everybody at the top to read about these points here, about the fact that the unintended environmental impacts can hamper the community subsequent to the intervention by the humanitarian programs. And I think, considering who we've got online at the moment and the previous discussions we've had throughout the week, everybody's pretty clear that supply chain's right there in the middle of this, right at the crossroads of how we can make a difference for good or for bad. And we heard in the session before about how waste and packaging is a key element of that, whether it be packaging for the relief items or even other aspects associated with humanitarian actions, such as the waste products from fleets, the tires, the lubricants, the motor oils, etc. So we know that often in the countries where we are operating, where we have the humanitarian responses, the countries themselves might have very limited infrastructure. And we also know that there is limited information and solution sharing at the moment. It's getting a lot better. We know that. We've seen that today and throughout the week, but we know that there's also room for more sharing of good practice and solutions and information. And we also are very conscious that it's hard for partners. They might have the best intentions in the world, but it requires resources to introduce a lot of these practices, whether it be in policies or in practice. Thanks, Catherine. Let's jump on to the next one. So here you can see in front of you, and I won't read it out word for word, the overall objective of this particular project. I'll be quiet for a moment while you read through that one. I hope you've had a chance to read through that now. And I think flagging in the first paragraph a really key aspect, which is, as humanitarian actors and humanitarian loggies, we're also very conscious that it's the collaborations with other sectors, such as the private sector and the academic sector, as well as with our brother and sister clusters. We really need to do that in order to be able to make meaningful progress in this area. So really those linkages are not just restricted to internal to the humanitarian logistics community, but also that outreach, collaboration and work with other sectors. And you're going to hear hopefully a bit later on from John G, who's with us today, of one example of that collaboration with academia. So we're going to come to the crunchy detail about what the project involves soon, but we'll go on to the next slide, please, Catherine. And here we have a little question for everybody. I don't know if everybody's mintied out, but Catherine, maybe you'd like to explain to everybody what this one's for.
Yeah, so I've also just put the link to the Minty in the chat in case you don't have your phone on you at the moment. But essentially what we're trying to ask, and I don't know if you can see the Minty screen or if it's still on my presentation only. Is it only on the presentation?
We're in the presentation at the moment, so we can see the QR code and we've got the link, the linky thing.
Okay, so what we're asking, and I'm going to try and show the other screen. What we're asking basically is what's the biggest challenge to sustainability in logistics for each of you. So I know that this is it's a difficult time for the session for many of us. It's the end of the week. It's a Friday, but we really do want to get some feedback from you all in terms of what your thoughts are. So if we can get some voting going on, then here we go. Let me share this screen here. Okay, so feedback from the group. We've got a number of options here: funding, knowing a workable solution, getting advice and support, understanding the problem, and then access to training. Oh, interesting. So I think actually as more votes are coming in, oh, I'm popping up and down. It's kind of, it's in line with the background and sort of research that we did when developing this project and looking at some of the solutions that we have. Okay, so I think that's the end of the voting. Oh, no, one more coming in. Knowing a workable solution seems to be highlighted as a quite substantial problem. Advice and support, and then funding. And I think also we did hear from colleagues in different donor agencies during the panel earlier in the week, and Greg with the joint initiative, that this is something that that is becoming more and more sort of on our radars as we move forward, sustainability and humanitarian logistics. So yeah, with some of those challenges, I think you guys have sort of hit the nail on the head as far as that goes, in terms of what we've identified as some challenges. So gaps in data, basically, we know that we don't know. It's what we know. We know that there are problems that exist. Athalie highlighted this earlier. Greg highlighted it. We talked about it earlier in the week. But basically, we don't have a method to really quantify the environmental impact of humanitarian logistics. It doesn't really exist quite yet. There's gaps in capacity. So again, highlighted in some of the challenges that you all brought up during the Menti, the unintended impacts are quite high, but we don't really have the capacity in the field and really to drive some of these sustainable approaches. And then this is actually quite perfect in what came back with the Menti. So the third highest issue is gaps in expertise. So you really need to be able to go to somebody to get more information and figure out sort of what are some of the solutions. What do we need to be looking at when we're designing our supply chain interventions? So the WREC project basically intends to support the humanitarian community with the partnership with the organizations to gather data on the impact of logistics, compile, collate, disseminate information and guidance. There will also be training, developed tools will be developed and shared. Tools that exist will be sort of highlighted in a knowledge portal to be able to exchange ideas. We're going to be focusing sort of on some waste and greenhouse gas issues, as well as the quantification of sort of what the problem is, and then mapping and sharing all of these different complementary initiatives. So that's where we're headed with the project. So supported by environmental experts mentioned, we're going to be working on guidance and training, looking at some case studies to have some of that background information so we know sort of what has been happening in the field, what can we sort of build upon and harmonize our requirements to have some environmental protection sort of built into our programs in the field, and how humanitarian logistics can really make such a big impact on driving some of this change. And then finally, to provide that platform for local collaboration and fostering local solutions. And I think I'll put up in a little bit sort of the screenshot of the website and that tool that we're trying to develop now. So it's on the way coming, which is a good thing. And this year, like Athalie said, we did get some funding so far. So we have a generous contribution from USAID Bureau of Humanitarian Affairs, as well as from the UPS Foundation. That's enabled us to kick off some activities so far. Our project steering committee has been established, and we're holding monthly meetings to sort of get those activities started to make sure that things are coming online. The centralized platform for environmental guidance is going to be live, and it's going to be updated on a regular basis to link with the complementary initiatives that I mentioned, and Greg also mentioned some of these as well. You'll see some screenshots on this slide too that sort of highlight some of the different things that are happening in the humanitarian community with regards to sustainability and humanitarian logistics, and making sure that we're gathering data and coordinating with sort of all parties involved in the humanitarian response. Yongi, do you want to discuss a little bit about the Homolog Institute and Henken's support on this project as well? May I hand over to you?
Sure, I can give a bit of insights of where we stand and what we will do. Our involvement in this project is basically mostly for the first part of the project. And we are supporting the project with the following number of steps. One is to start off with a literature review, and by this, what we mean is that we both would go through great literature and thereby all sorts of initiatives that already exist and that are going on also in parallel to this particular one. But we also want to go through the status quo in research and support the log cluster and all the partners in this initiative with what is being done there and what we can learn also beyond just the humanitarian spectrum, like what is the wider kind of area in reverse logistics, in waste management, in circular economy related endeavors. But then we will need your input. And this is maybe the biggest issue here. We intend to have workshops with the humanitarian community. We want to have then after that kind of a survey, and survey I know is the wrong word, especially technically and methodologically it's a wrong word, but what we mean is that we send out questions to you, which we hope to get a lot of answers for. And then we will follow up with some stakeholder interviews, especially around what Catherine mentioned, like, you know, developing some of the case studies and things like that. So these will focus really much on what is already ongoing and what we can learn from those. Then, of course, at the same time, we'll coordinate with all sorts of other initiatives. I mean, you just heard in the past hour, the latest one that is ongoing in parallel to this, both to avoid duplication, but to actually also feed into one another. And then after all of these things are done, another institution, another academic institution will take over from us in this particular initiative and build on what we found. So we also coordinate with them to make sure that what we collect as data and analyze as data can really feed into their next steps. Other than that, I don't want to bore you with the Homolog Institute and the Hanken School of Economics. I think many of you have maybe already heard of us. I happen to sit here in lovely, snowy Helsinki, Finland, and greetings from the winter that is definitely coming.
Thank you very much for that. So some additional sort of next steps that can kick off our discussion. Stories from the field and various resources. So the website is basically going to be highlighting different various resources, like we mentioned, consolidating information from partners, from the private sector, academic, some guidelines, tools that can be used as well. And we'd like to make sure that partners are aware that, you know, feedback from you guys is what's critical and really going to drive this forward. Share your best practices, share your experiences, challenges, any innovation that you're you know, thinking of in the field, and questions that you have that we can also sort of look into and consider from the project side. So definitely keep us in the loop as things come up, and we will make sure to also highlight this on the website when we get more information. So the next steps from the project management side are basically the recruitment and onboarding of the dedicated project manager and subject matter experts. These subject matter experts are going to be embedded in each of the 4 partner organizations, and they're going to be basically there to provide that dedicated support to the humanitarian community with regards to sustainable approaches to humanitarian logistics. So there will be somewhere that you can sort of push a button and say, I need to figure out, you know, what's going on here, and you can have experts helping you with that information. And this is actually a really cool tool that we're looking at developing, and maybe I can actually ask Etheli if she wants to expand on linking and learning a little bit more. Thanks.
Exactly. And by the way, hi Gyungi, it does look very snowy over there. Lovely to see you. And thank you very much for the introduction to the academic side. That's fantastic. I mean, really fantastic. And on the linking and learning, one of the things that really runs through the whole project is the fact that we know that duplication is not what anybody's after, and how can we make the most and leverage what stuff we've got out there already, right? And for logs cluster, we've got a load of tools or platforms or whatever you want to call it that we've been trying to look through them and see how can we make the most of this moving forward. And one of the applications that popped up when we were thinking about this, for whoever was on the GLM, not the last one or the one before, Log.IE, the tool that we used previously called the preparedness platform, we noticed that you can really use it for people in various locations around the world to sort of flag up, hi, I'm here and we're doing this. So we thought that on the micro level and the local level, it could be a fantastic opportunity to link up networks in country who might be working on similar kind of projects. I don't know, we might have 2, 3, 4, 5 organizations in Haiti that might all be looking at solar solutions for cooking or something, but they might not necessarily have been in touch with each other so far. So as well as the kind of macro hookups that we're thinking about in terms of the website that Catherine flagged up before, where again, just to stress, we're not saying we'll be re-uploading the same work that other people might have on their platforms, but at least we can bring the two together, we can link to each other's portals. And this one is very much looking at how we can foster those local and regional connections on different projects, all moving in the same direction, i.e. trying to find sustainable alternatives to what we're doing in logs and supply chain. So coming to a cinema soon will be that. We're not quite live with it yet, but we're hoping that that will be a fantastic way that people can come forward and pop up with their activities, and so that will also spark those connections at local level. Shall I stop whispering now? I got too excited about that.
That's okay. So one more Minty here, and let me, I think the link is still in the chat. I will go back to sharing the screen so you can see. So open-ended. So tell us how you would want to get engaged in the project and what you'd really like to see. I think with this, we'd really like to open it up to feedback, questions, comments that you might have, and sort of take it from there, and we can sort of address them as they come. So please feel free to type into the Menti. You can unmute yourself or raise your hand if you'd like to ask the question, give us a comment. Thank you very much. Coming in yet? They're still with us. There we go.
Working group. That's a big word at the end of a Friday. Working groups. But a very good point. And by the way, also to reflect and link this one in with the strategy that we're putting together over the course of this week and the preceding months for the logs cluster. One of the questions that we had for logs cluster partners is, how do you see practical ways of moving things forward together? Do you think we should try to mainstream sustainability in all of the activities we're doing, or have dedicated specific projects aligned to this to drive forward certain areas? And I think the response that came back so far was a combination, that having specific dedicated activities and projects such as this are really necessary to making sure you can make progress. But at the same time, when we look through the activities in the strategy implementation plan for logs cluster in the next 5 years, that we use that optic of making sure that when we go through all of them, we've really taken that moment to look at them and see how might we ensure that they are really linked up with this common wish to move forward in a sustainable way. This keeps moving around, Catherine. And by the way, do you know what? I just realized we forgot to introduce ourselves. After a day of chatting on Zoom, you kind of presume that everybody knows each other already. So Gyongi, I think we managed to introduce you. Lovely to see you again. Catherine, I don't think we introduced you. So I'll say hello, Catherine. Hello, everybody. This is Catherine. I'm really pleased that Catherine's with us on the GLC support team and has been really getting in amongst it on this project and trying to move it forward since we've been able to kick it off this year, and many other things as well. But Catherine, lovely to have you with us. So we're both on the support team side, and we're sorry that we're hoping Christian could be here from DRC today, but he's unfortunately under anaesthetic at this moment. So we hope he's doing well. That's a lot of feedback in there, and I can't read it Catherine, but I see a big working group, which means lots of people came back on that, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that is that's definitely a big theme, which is great. All of the other ones seem to be maybe one or two votes in terms of guidance. So yeah, I mean, I think that's great, and it's something that we can definitely look into creating a working group. Now, maybe whoever voted for that, or whoever put that in, if you want to raise your hand and maybe expand on that a little bit, it would be great to hear feedback in terms of sort of what you would want a working group to look into specifically, because the topic of sustainability and humanitarian logistics is a very, very large one. So really, yeah, if anybody wants to provide feedback. Okay. Sarah, you go ahead.
Hi, CRS has been involved in the JSPI project, as well as a couple other academic studies and research. And I'm really excited to hear about this initiative. One of the things that I've just found helpful with these other aspects of sustainability and other initiatives is the regular opportunity to spout out ideas and organize around the different pillars of the initiative. And you documented out where your unique pathway is. And so having the opportunity to understand more around each of those pillars and then ask questions, organize, and all of that is, I think, a helpful way forward. So that's why I put it in. Okay.
Thanks, Sarah. Fantastic points. And I think, as you say, a lot of this, the challenges that were flagged up at the beginning were the gaps in data around the topic itself. But I think also we're all very conscious of the multitude of initiatives and activities and how the best way is to bring ourselves together. And I think that effort for mapping is a really key part of everything. And we heard from Greg and the team how critical that is as well. So I think putting those two things on the scales, on one side, we know that there's so much that needs to be done under such difficult circumstances that on our own as individual organizations, it's going to be virtually impossible unless you have unlimited resources. We heard a lot about the short-term investment needed for long-term action in this area. But I think that it's really encouraging that if there's so many of us that are really committed to bringing these things together, and Sarah, you put it in a really beautiful way, which I can't repeat entirely now, but making sure that everybody's very clear about what their unique pathways are and how they all converge and what we can do together. I think it's really critical here. Do we need to do a little quick refresh, Catherine, on the crunchy actions that are coming out of this? Because I'm conscious that on a Friday afternoon, sometimes it's or maybe it's just me, moving from the concept to the practical sometimes needs a bit of a refresh. So in terms of practicalities for the project, we've got the areas of activity that Gongi referred to there, which is two academic studies, one being qualitative, is that right, Gongi, if I got it right term? Qualitative research, followed by a more quantitative research in this area. And then we have, of course, trying to embed specific expertise in this field within humanitarian sector, and in the case of the project, it will be embedding experts in various aspects of this in those four partners: DRC, IFRC, Save the Children, and WFP. We also have the concept of trying to make the most of the opportunities for exchange of information and platforms that we have within the cluster to bring together using a web page to bring together all the different activities that are out there, so that when partners do come to the Logs Cluster web page, they can also use that as a go-to point for linking to what's available out there, or flagging up where they haven't found anything out there that meets their needs or questions. And then, of course, associated with all of those activities will be a number of opportunities to exchange, such as the workshops that Jonji mentioned there. And I think very clearly coming through is from the little, what do you call the thing? The Mentee, Catherine, using opportunities where we can to bring together broader groups, such as working groups, including all the partners that want to engage in it specifically, so that we can make the most of the resources available. And you've put it up there on a slide. Thank you, Catherine. Exactly. There we go. So it's the last one of a long day. And Sarah, thank you very much for jumping in there. You must be the more energized of the group. So thank you very much for sharing and just reaching out to anybody if they might like to add any comments or questions at this point. And then, of course, we'll follow up by sharing with everybody both the deck and a bit more detail on the project, so you've got that to look at. Oh yeah, Sarah said she's okay. She's got the time difference on her side. Yeah, it's a good point, Sarah. It's like a snowball effect, right? You make the comment with one organization and then you realize that actually there's many others out there doing it, which is great news. Okay, well, there's one more in the chat there. Let's have a look. Yeah, Greg, no, exactly. And I think it's really going to be great. I mean, it's really looking at all the energy, Greg, that you and the team have managed to get going over the last 2 years as well, and how we can really plug in at the key points there and make the most of everybody's resources and efforts. I think it's really exciting. And we really hope that particularly this year with the COP26, we get a lot of momentum behind this, so we can really make sure we can make some key progress in this area. So big thanks to everybody for staying online. Catherine, Jonji, thank you very much from snowy Helsinki and slightly warmer states now, Catherine, where you are. And thanks a lot to everybody for their patience in the last one here. I know it's difficult to summon up energy at the end of the day, but I really am so pleased that we're able to move this initiative forward and get a bit of, the word is catalyst, no? Get a bit of energy behind everybody's efforts. We know that sometimes it's so hard to get out of the day-to-day operational response and look at things like this. So really, really keen to move forward. And thanks a lot to everybody. And thanks a lot to everybody for all their support in the day of General Marketplace. It's been lovely to see you all.